According to Alice Walker, in nature, nothing is perfect and yet everything is perfect. Trees can be contorted, bend in weird ways, and they're so beautiful. The planet that we live on is full of incredible living organisms that catches one's attention and are also an essential part of our ecosystem. Part of these living organisms is the biological species flora. Flora is a collective word for plant life that grows or formerly grew in a particular place or period. You might be wondering, how is it important in our ecosystem? Well, flora is vital in our ecosystem because without it, humans might not exist. Species flora initiates the generation and release of oxygen, which other living organisms need for respiration. Flora provide humans the sources of food, medicine, and water. Flora is also a part of the aesthetic value in our environment and is also a home for the species fauna. It significantly contributes to most countries' economies in terms of tourism, which is why many examples of flora species are marketed for food, decor, and other commercial items.
Biodiversity in the Philippines. Biodiversity or biological diversity is what we use to describe the variety of living beings and their interconnection with one another. In context, our country is one of the mega biodiverse countries in the world. It contains two-thirds of the Earth's biodiversity, or around 70 to 80% of the entire Earth's plant and animal species. As it is one of the world's biodiverse countries, we are the hotspot containing at least 700 threatened species, and this contains a huge majority of bird, amphibian, reptile, flora, and fish species, which all play a part in the large variety of ecosystems and habitats found in our capital country. One fun fact is that the Philippines is home to around 15% of all terrestrial wildlife species in the entire world. Not only does biodiversity preserve years of evolution and advancements and promote healthy environments for both humans and animals, but it also helps with the economy and our resources. According to BioFin or Biodiversity Finance Initiative, there's an estimated value of 3,209.5 billion pesos in services which relate to our ecosystem and biodiversity, many of which have not even been appraised or appreciated yet.
Now let us delve into what relationship do the nitrogen and sulfur cycles have with flora. As will be discussed further on later, the nitrogen cycle refers to the cycle of processes where nitrogen traverses both the living and non-living things. Unfortunately, nitrogen in its gaseous form cannot be utilized by plants, so it needs to change into different forms. The different ways plants can intake nitrogen is by transformation of nitrogen in plant root systems, where there some bacteria are attached and can process it. Further, nitrogen then aids in forming plant tissues. In summary, the only forms of nitrogen plant can absorb are nitrite and ammonium. Moving on with the sulfur cycle, sulfur is primarily found in sedimentary rocks or in seawater, then a percentage from other sources. Sulfur is vital for plants in the formation of chlorophyll, protein productions, and in activating certain enzymes. Plants are important as they serve as a crucial step in animal sulfur uptake, which they get by eating plants, and eventually towards the food chain. Lastly, plants also have selective means of absorbing sulfur, and the only form it is possible in is through soluble sulfate. To end the section, both the nitrogen and sulfur cycles play important roles. The abundance or lack of these components have detrimental effects to the flora.
Next to that is the disruption to ecosystem and its effects. First one is the nitrogen cycle. This is greatly impacted by a variety of human behaviors, by burning fossil fuels, adding nitrogen-based fertilizers, and engaging in other actions. The amount of naturally accessible nitrogen in an area can be greatly decreased. Following the terrestrial ecosystem, it is the infusion of nitrogen may cause nutrient imbalance in trees, modifications to the health of the forest, and reductions in biodiversity. More processes than merely the nitrogen cycle are impacted when nitrogen availability is increased because there is frequently a shift in carbon storage. Third is sulfur cycle. Emissions from this interact with atmospheric chemicals, converting them to sulfate salts and causing acid rain. Both the natural and artificial ecosystems, including the abiotic environment for both plants and animals, are harmed. And lastly, agricultural systems. Fertilizers are widely used to boost plant growth, but leftover nitrogen, typically in the form of nitrate, can escape the soil, infiltrate streams and rivers, and eventually find its way into our drinking water. 60% of the Earth's environment has deteriorated over the last 60 years. About 23 billion tons of resources have been taken from the Earth by humans so far. That only applies to this year. Despite our greatest efforts to modify it, it is a persistent practice. Our natural ecosystems are struggling to respond to the various demands and are unable to adapt. If we keep ruining the environment and depleting resources, it won't be long before it's too late for them to recover without our assistance.
Invasive species. Within the country's largest inland body of water lies a problem so large that the local and national government are greatly concerned with the environmental implications. The Laguna de Bay is home to a disproportionately large population of water hyacinths, a plant species that is considered an invasive alien species within the water body. These plants specifically thrive in environments of poor water quality, and its growing population indicates the poor water quality currently present in the lake. This problem, though, leads to a question of whether we are also invasive. Why is this problem only arising now, in an age of heavily human-produced pollution? Can we be considered invasive for our interactions with said ecosystem? It is definitely truthful to say that us humans have caused a great deal of damage to our environment, but are they considered invasive? Perhaps it can be said that we aren't invasive regardless of our impact, but our actions do lead to actual invasive species to inhabit these areas.
When left to decompose without human intervention, the water lilies expel too much carbon in the waters, killing fisheries around the lake directly, and indirectly it produces algae, which in June 2019, people residing around Laguna Lake complained about a foul odor coming from the lake. This was caused by an algal bloom. The water's alkalinity and power of hydrogen also changes with more decomposing organisms left in it, causing unnatural changes to soil and irrigation systems around it. In addition to this, the lilies covered too much of the water's surface, blocking the sun from entering the water, taking away nutrients from 31 species of fish, 24 macrophytes, 36 zooplankton, and 154 phytoplanktons in the lake. As a way to help get rid of the invasive species, LGUs began livelihood seminars utilizing the water lilies, from weaving baskets and giant banigs to using the water lily extract as mosquito repellents, and as far as turning these into bakyas and gowns. These LGU programs have been recognized by the Department of Science and Technology in 2015 as an innovative solution. However, these livelihoods are short-term. The heavier problem of keeping the waters clean and controlling the growth of these plants must be addressed. Temporary solutions such as dredging the lake were employed. And DENR is now applying a series of small-scale experiments in Taytay Rizal in coordination with members of the Samahan ng Mangingisda sa Lawa ng Taytay or the SMALT organization.
In this info video, we have discussed the importance of flora in our ecosystem, the current state of biodiversity in the Philippines, and flora's relationship to the nitrogen and sulfur cycle. We also discussed how nitrogen cycle, terrestrial ecosystems, sulfur cycle, and agricultural systems are being affected or disrupted rather. In addition, we have also discussed a little bit about invasive species, and most importantly, we have discussed the effect of water lilies in our local ecosystem. To sum everything up, what we want to emphasize to you is that water lilies or lily plants have a significant impact in our local ecosystem. And yes, it may have some negative effects, along with the advantages it brings, but we believe that there are ways in which we can turn these adverse impacts to positive ones.
That's all for our presentation. Thank you for watching.